Before, I was a novice filmmaker because I had never used or set up a proper filming camera like the Blackmagic camera before. Therefore, the camera workshops enabled me to learn some new skills surrounding filming using a professional camera. The aim of Camera Workshop 1 was to introduce us to different filming cameras and how to set them up. For instance, we learned how to use the settings of the cameras like white balancing, bubbling. Based on this workshop, I was able to apply these basic filming setup techniques to my own opening sequence as a way of making it visually look better. The aim of Camera Workshop 2 was to learn the rules for filming that people in the industry use. For example, we learned about the 180-degree rule and what people in the industry call out when filming. I adhered to these rules when filming a short sequence, and thus slowly I was transforming from not knowing much about industry-level filming to being able to film my own 2-minute-long thriller sequence. The aim of Camera Workshop 3 was to use the skills I learned in the previous workshops to create a basic sequence with dialogue. For instance, I utilized the information I learned about camera movements and angles from class by practically filming using wide shots and mid shots and finally close-ups. I took from this workshop the importance of planning the shots, and thus, for my thriller sequence, I made a shot list and storyboard to get a rough idea of how the shots would flow together. The aim of the final camera workshop was to further develop the skills we'd learned from the previous workshops, but with an added gun prop that would need special effects and editing. This workshop helped solidify my confidence in using a camera without assistance, as I was mostly in charge of shooting the sequence. I made sure to use the techniques and follow the rules we were taught, allowing us to have extra time for more creative and imaginative shots. Overall, the workshops helped transition me from a beginner who'd never filmed with a professional camera before to an able filmmaker who could create a visually promising thriller opening sequence. Before, I was an amateur editor because I had a small amount of editing experience on iMovie. Therefore, the editing workshops where we used Adobe Premiere enabled me to improve my basic skills surrounding editing by using an industry-level editing software. The aim of Editing Workshop 1 was to introduce us to Adobe Premiere and how it works, as most of us had never used it before. For instance, we learned about industry terms for tools within the program like bins and rushes, and how to properly piece together the clips we shot during the camera workshops. I made recordings of the session so that I could look back on the information I learned about the basics of editing when editing my opening sequence later. The aim of Editing Workshop 2 was to edit a sequence together, but with an added new skill of sorting out the sound of dialogue.
Where should I hide the body? You finally killed him?
For example, in our rushes there were several takes of the same scene at different angles. However, continuity was an issue, as despite the actress saying the same thing in each clip, things like the placement of hair had changed between shots. I took from this workshop the need to stress continuity when filming my thriller sequence, as it made the editing process easier and less frustrating as I didn't come across an error I couldn't fix. The aim of Editing Workshop 3 was to use the skills I learned in the previous workshops to edit a sequence, but with an added new skill of special effects. For instance, we used Adobe After Effects to add a muzzle flash onto a gunshot. This workshop means I can utilize this complex skill to my future projects if I needed to add some cool special effects as a visual stimulus. The final 2 workshops were just refreshers, as we had just finished filming our opening sequence. Therefore, we needed to remind ourselves about the basic tools of editing a sequence together. This helped solidify my confidence in editing on a more professional and industry-wide program, as I had only used iMovie beforehand. Overall, the workshops helped transition me from an amateur who'd only used iMovie to an able editor who could piece together a nicely flowing thriller sequence. To conclude, I developed my production skills through using the camera and editing workshops to advance the basic skills I had been exposed to. I was a complete beginner in filming because I had never used a professional camera before. Now I know how to film a sequence at an industry level, as I used the camera workshops to practice and improve my filming capabilities. Also, I was an amateur in editing because I had only used iMovie to edit simple videos together. Now I know how to edit a sequence at a professional level, as I used the editing workshops to prepare and develop my editing skills on an industry-level editing program. Overall, my production skills have progressed significantly, as I am at a point where I can take all the information I've learned and successfully apply them to my future projects without assistance.